Hi everyone, welcome to the TLC Real Talk Women in Tech and Leadership panel discussion, where we'll be joined by some of the world's most inspirational and influential female leaders. Over the next hour and 15 minutes, we'll be asked by our panel about their experiences, as well as some of the obstacles and caveats they've faced or are still facing now as women in technology or women in leadership positions. We'll have a Q&A session towards the last 15 minutes of this panel discussion, so please submit your questions in the YouTube chat function or on our LinkedIn event page. Without further ado, I will hand over to our fantastic moderator for this discussion, Krista Arndt, Deputy CISO of Customers Bank.
Good morning and good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for your time. I'm very excited to be here today. International Women's Day has been in observance since the late 1900s. From 1908 and the March on New York City for demanding shorter hours, better pay, and voting rights to present day, the world has witnessed a significant shift in both women's and society's thoughts about women's equality. With more women in the boardroom, greater equality in legislative rights, and increased critical mass of women's visibility as impressive role models in everyday aspects of life, what better way to celebrate than by honoring some of these women today in technology and leadership by sharing their experiences. Again, my name is Krista Arndt. I currently serve as the Deputy CISO for Customers Bank, and I will be your moderator for this event. But enough about me, let's meet the panel. I'll briefly introduce the panel, and then the panel can give a bio of their background in technology and leadership. Our first panelist is going to be Dr. Sarah Lina, Chief Executive Officer of FiOS Genomics. Then we have Sean John, Director, SCI Business Development and Strategic Growth of Microsoft. Jennifer Murphy, Chief Marketing Officer of Five9. Dieter Galecki, Senior Technology Manager, Risk and Compliance of Just Eat. And then Devisha Maroli, Digital and Online Director of Joe Malone. Sarah, why don't you give us a little bit about your background?
Yes, thank you very much, Krista. Hi, everybody. So my name is Sarah Lina. I'm the Chief Exec of FiOS Genomics. We are a bioinformatics company based here in Scotland. I've been the CEO since 2014, and before that I've worked for nearly 20 years in drug development and commercialisation of new technologies, mainly within SMEs, contract research organisations, both in the UK and also in Asia. My background is pharmacology. I have a PhD in neuropharmacology, and my interest is very much making this inefficient process of drug development more efficient. And my business interests are in growing and the commercialisation of small organisations.
Great, thank you, Sarah. Sean, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, I'm Sean John, and I've got an awful Microsoft acronym in my title, which really means that I'm responsible for the strategic growth initiatives for security, compliance, and identity. That's what SCI stands for at Microsoft, looking at the new and adjacent markets, the unmet needs that we need to address. I've been just coming up to 25 years in cybersecurity, working for nearly 30, very much interested in how we actually secure digital transformation, do the new and exciting things we want to do in the world, but work out how we can do them in a secure fashion.
Great, thank you. Jennifer, tell the audience a little bit about yourself.
Wonderful, very glad to be here. So my name's Jennifer Murphy. I'm the Chief Marketing Officer at Five9, and my background is predominantly in enterprise IT. So I've been in enterprise IT for over 15 years now, working with customers, going through digital transformations, and gone through a couple of my own with my team as well. And my background actually comes from the psychology and sociology side of the house, looking at what factors make people adopt new technologies. So how can we borrow from computer science, psychology and sociology in order to determine how people will adopt new technologies, which is pretty pertinent in today's world.
That's fascinating. Thank you. Dieter, why don't you introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Didar Gilici, and in this panel, I feel like a junior right now. So I've been doing risk and governance for the last 13 years, but the last 2 years, I've been more interested in tech and leadership. And it is my outside of work hours with my community work that has really showed me what the problems people are facing, the women in tech are facing, or women who are trying to get into tech is facing. So I'm really glad to be part of these communities.
Great, thank you. And finally, Divisha, why don't you introduce yourself?
Thanks, Krista. Like Dida said, how lucky are we to be a part of this incredible panel with such strong women leaders. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Divisha Maroli. I'm currently the Digital and Online Director for Joe Malone London at the Estee Lauder Companies. I've had the good fortune of, I don't know whether we call it good fortune, actually. I've been a digital native, worked in digital businesses my whole career, but I have definitely had the good fortune of working in different places in the world, so 4 different countries, different companies, accelerating their digital presence and amplifying their digital businesses. So Jennifer, I've been on the customer facing side of the digital transformation. Being a woman and being a woman of color, to me, diversity and inclusion is a huge passion. And having lived and worked in different markets around the world, to me, that is such an important part of building an inclusive team that eventually delivers quality in business. So I really, really passionately feel about women in leadership, as well as diversity in the workplace.
Excellent. Thank you all. I truly appreciate it. So without further delay, let's get into some of the QA and let's hear more deeply about your experiences. But I just want to kick this off with a really important fact that actually came from Kaspersky. I believe they put it out this morning or last night. 38% of women working in IT and technology claim that they felt wary about entering the professional workplace or entering an IT or technical profession due to the lack of female leaders represented. And that is a global stat. So that's actually pretty interesting and even more telling about why we're having this discussion today and honoring some of the unsung heroes in technology and leadership. So the first question that, and I'll go around and, everybody can have their input on this because I'd love to hear everybody's perspective. But the first thing I want to address is, what do you see as a unique obstacle or misconception of women in the workplace today that still exists? Jennifer, why don't you answer first?
Sure. So what I still see as one of the most sort of, I don't know if it's unique obstacle or misconception, but I still see the almost ignorant attitude that women are not or don't come from a technical background. And it amazes me every day when I see that misconception perpetuated, especially for me as a marketing leader. I often get people who question my technological savvy, so to speak. One, because I'm in marketing, and I use air quotes there because often people think that marketing is just about pretty PowerPoints. That's one beautiful element of marketing, which is brand, but there are many more elements to it. And 2, because I'm female. And for me, that comes down to, I think, really 2 things. I characterize it as ignorance and fear. I think there still is an ignorance in the workplace as to the challenges that females face, not from a place of malice in many cases, but in the root definition of the word itself. The root definition of the word ignorance is a lack of knowledge or understanding. And to me, that leads to number 2, which is the second part, the fear, right? There is a fear in some cases to speak up and acknowledge a lack of knowledge or to become an ally. And I actually think vulnerability and transparency is one of the most important capabilities and features of a leader. That's why for me, I love this year's theme for International Women's Day, which is choose to challenge, because there are so many examples when you challenge the status quo where great things can happen. So I think for me, it's that ignorance and the fear, and those 2 together can sometimes be a little bit of a dangerous combination.
Okay. Yeah, that's a very good point. Dieter, do you have anything that you'd like to add to that?
Yeah, I think what Jennifer is also saying, it's the benevolent sexism. And if you have not heard this term before, please go and read a bit about it, because we could have all this session about it, but it's there's not enough time. benevolent sexism, and it's specifically that thinking women may not be good at technical stuff. That is something that we are facing every day. And also, as you mentioned, Krista, the role models, because we didn't have too many role models in this space when we were coming into this space. It has really, it might have played a role in discouraging us to speaking up, making up our own opinions, and maybe kept us from being more involved in tech.
Great. Yeah, that's a really good point. And I think we'll get into mentorship and role models in a little bit, but I think that you're going to see that resounding theory behind a lot of these responses. Sarah, do you have any final thoughts on the idea of misconception of women in the workplace?
Yeah, I think things have come a long way. They really have, but there is still some work to do. And I think regardless of the tech side, I think that women are generally held to a higher standard than men. And, there's no room for just competency in a woman leader. You've got to be brilliant. And I think there's also problems related to, if you're a strong, confident person, you're seen as competent, but not likable. And if you're, perhaps the softer side of management, a woman in leadership with a softer side that a lot more women have, then you're seen as incompetent. So I think, your assertiveness can be seen as aggression, and that conjures up a whole lot of issues for some women. I also think imposter syndrome is a big thing for women. And I see that on the science side, overcoming that, as Jennifer said, are you competent in the technologies? Well, of course you are. Why wouldn't you be? And kind of overcoming that and just having confidence, I think, is an issue that women still have. And it takes some time, I think, to truly overcome that.
Yeah, and that's really a good point, right? So the confidence, and the balance of, when you're sort of saying no, that you're being emotional or irrational. And the other thing that I also see, and it's funny because in cyber and in tech, you have to remove most emotion from it. We're a very quantitative based and scientifically based function here. And so it's really difficult to put an emotion in there when there are standards and guidelines that we have to abide by at minimum, and it's provable, repeatable. The other thing that I see additionally is being a mother and balancing a leadership career. And, the fears that potentially you can't do that because both take a lot of time and a lot of energy, a lot of your resource and a lot of your attention. But I beg to argue that it makes me a more competent leader because I can balance, it's almost a complete 180 between being a mother and being a leader, but then there are a lot of qualities that intersect. So I think all of you have really, really good points to offer in this. So let's switch topics and switch pages a little bit. So you're talking about your views when it comes to misconceptions, but so what have you learned? Or, do you have key learnings that you can share to other women looking to get into tech and just general leadership roles, regardless of whether it's tech, from your experiences with these trials and misconceptions? So I will turn this over to Divisha first. I'd love to hear your perspective.
I think on sort of just generally for women interested in going into leadership, or anyone interested in going into leadership and women in tech, it's important to remember what gets you there is not going to make you successful once you're there. So you just have to go from being an expert, an absolute expert at your craft, at your skill, at your area of expertise, to then leading a bunch of experts and getting the best out of your team. And those are very two different competencies. So just being aware of that, I think, is a big step forward, in that when you're looking to make that step up, you can start presenting in a way that sort of demonstrate those skills to a broader audience. Secondly, for women in particular, like Sarah mentioned, competency. Yeah, we are all competent. Like, you have to assume you're competent. So present, don't prove. You know your stuff. Don't over-index on trying to prove. that you deserve to be there once you're there and that you are the expert. It's a given, and it should be considered a given. And lastly, as women, like again, all of my fellow panelists mentioned, we're too concerned about, because of the perceptions of we're too soft, we're too aggressive, we come across a certain way, what people are thinking. It's harder said than done, but let go of it and own your brand. If you are an outgoing personality that likes to sort of be out there and more aggressive, own it. If you are sort of step back and quiet, own it. It's fine to be any kind of leader. There is not one set sort of leadership persona that makes you a good leader or not.
Yeah, you make a really good point. And I think the most critical thing right now is to make sure that you are authentic and authentically you. I think that's an excellent point. So thank you for that. So I'm going to turn this over to Sarah. What would you like to add?
Yeah, just to completely agree with yourself and Davisha, you've got to be authentic. You know, you can't keep up the act for so long, you know. And so it's just about just being true to yourself. And I think having confidence in your own belief, you know, if you've got to a position of leadership, you've got there because you know it, you know your stuff, and you kind of deserve to be there. So own it, and, you know, just manage people like you want to be managed, I would say. You know, treat people as you would want to be treated. And that's not difficult, you know. Yeah, that's really all to add on that one.
That's actually an outstanding perspective. Thank you. So how about Didar? Do you have anything you'd like to add with your key learnings?
I do, because we do guide people to be themselves and stuff, but it's really daunting when it comes to taking that first step. So for me, being part of the communities and being in that safe space where I can start being myself, and then taking more roles, more leadership roles within the communities, it has really skyrocketed my career, because I developed those leadership skills, or I proved to myself that I have those skills. I didn't even know if I had them, but it was a great way to prove to myself that I can do this in a safe space. And then I was able to be more confident in when I'm talking about my opinions. And it's really great to become a part of any community that you feel safe. It gives you mentors, it gives you peers, people to bounce your ideas off and practice any skills and ask any of your questions that you might not feel comfortable asking at the workplace. So please use the communities. Communities are there for women who want to get better.
Yeah, you bring up a really good point. Another point about mentorship, right? So we're going to circle back to that in a minute, because I think mentorship, regardless of who you are in any industry, is a critical part of your success if you embrace it. But first, let's talk about what's coming up next. What can we do as women in role model positions or in leadership in the workplace to encourage greater diversity in our workplaces? Jennifer, would you like to start on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think, you know, a lot of the panelists have talked about it as we've gone through, but I think to encourage greater diversity in the workplace, it comes down to a few things. I think that the first one is about being present and being aware of the challenges and biases that exist in the workplace and in society in general. You know, sometimes you're just not aware, and sometimes you need to be reminded. So being present and being aware, being proactive and continuing to challenge. You know, Sarah mentioned, you know, yes, we've made a lot of progress, but I think we have to be proactive. We have to continue to challenge. We have to be persistent, because there is more change that is needed, because we're still having these conversations where people, you know, are treating women and women in leadership positions differently, and that's not on. And then the other thing is, I think, continue to have passion around it. Often in the workplace, you know, having passion or emotion is seen as a negative thing, but it's not. right? I come from an Italian background. My mother's Italian. I speak with my hands. I'm very passionate. I'm passionate about what I do, but being passionate doesn't mean that I'm overly emotional or that I'm not competent or I don't know. That's how I present myself, right? And as Divisha said, you have to own who you are. And so I think what's coming next is just seeing people being more vocal, more passionate, more persistent, making progress going forward. And it might sound boring, but keep doing the things that we've been doing, right? Keep being persistent, keep moving forward, keep bringing awareness, because it's with those continual incremental changes that we will keep to move things forward and hopefully, start to turn the conversation around.
Yeah, and that's a great point, right? Understanding the diversity of backgrounds ourselves helps us relate and helps others break down barriers and understand their diversity. So I'm going to actually turn it back over to Divisha because you make a really good point as well that kind of piggybacks on that about being authentic. So Divisha, how do you encourage and promote authenticity within the workplace and diversity?
I think like Jennifer mentioned, right, there is an awareness piece of being aware of where we are currently and where we want to go and being honest with yourself of, okay, these things are good, but there is still, we're here in our journey, there is a long way to go and we have a ways to go. The second part is education, just having that education to teach managers, to teach leaders, not only how to build great diverse teams, but to manage them. Because thinking about sort of a truly diverse team, you're going to have people, very simply, who want holidays at different times of the year that don't really match with, say, the pattern of what it looks like in the market that you're in. Just an understanding of, okay, it looks different, their culture looks different, or how they present themselves. They're shy for a reason because authority is feared, things like that. Just having that understanding allows you as leaders to bring out the best in teams and create the right opportunities for them to move forward and not just template them into this is what great looks like within this company. There is sort of room for everyone to be their authentic self. And the last part is empowering people to actually celebrate their diversity, bring their diversity to work, and also making decisions in terms of how many times have we heard these are not roles that women typically apply for, or XYZ don't typically apply for, or you don't find them. Great, let's go out and find them, because there are people across every industry, across every sort of profession, that you can build a diverse pool of candidates. So let's empower our teams to build diverse teams by breaking or bending the rules a little bit and say, if they're not coming to us, let's go to them. What do they want to see in our organization? And how do we highlight those bits so that we bring diversity into our teams?
Excellent. Yeah, really good point. And that makes me think more strongly along the lines of education, right? These people don't typically apply for these types of roles. And then I know, Didar, I want to go to you next because to continue on that topic of education, you mentioned in the beginning that you feel kind of like a novice compared to everyone else. And I don't feel that way at all, neither do your peers here. But it makes me think that you put a really heavy emphasis on education. So how do you promote diversity and maybe educational diversity within the workplace?
So I want to answer by saying what I'm going to do next from my personal view. I'm going to educate myself more on neurodiversity, because I have been, it come to my attention that many adults get diagnosed very, very late with the neurodiverse, what are they called? Not symptoms. What? Anyway, so
qualities.
Let's call them qualities. That's great. And they have been dealing with these symptoms all their lives, and they were labeled as being lazy, or they were labeled as being. There's so many different types of neurodiversity issues that we need to tackle. And once I understand what they are more, I'm gonna encourage people around me to speak about them more, so that I can understand them on a personal basis. So I think as leaders, we need to do more of going proactively to people and enabling them to talk about these, because they've been silenced. Maybe they silenced themselves all their lives, and they might have got a diagnosis at the age of 35, 36. So it is a journey for them to understand themselves, and we can help them in that.
Yeah, that's a fascinating point, and that speaks very dearly to my heart. I have someone in my immediate family who is neurodiverse, and I see him struggle, but he is so intelligent. And actually, when you read in tech, there's a huge push for neurodiversity in hiring, because there's some neurodiverse gives a unique perspective, and they're actually some of the most intelligent because they have a unique way of thinking, which I know, especially in cyber, we like to hire from all sorts of backgrounds because it gives that unique perspective, where someone who strictly had an infosec track, may have a totally different viewpoint on an incident or a threat or a risk mitigant that someone else does. So
yeah.
Thank you for that. That's wonderful. Sarah, I'll turn it over to you. How can we encourage a greater diversity within the workplace?
I think by setting an example. We're female leaders, and it's about leading by that example, and just not allowing there to be any discrimination, positive or negative. I just think, from the women's perspective, championing the women that we work with, showing that empathy and that flexibility, and it's not important. These things they're not important in terms of getting talent to where it should be and where people want to be. I just think it's about just being open and the right person for the right job, regardless of any other aspect.
Great. Thank you. Sean, I'm going to turn it over to you for this one. So I want to know how you encourage greater diversity, but then we're going to segue from your response into talking about mentorship, because I know that's a huge initiative of yours. So Sean, how do you encourage greater diversity in the workplace?
To me, diversity is about, we too often make it about a single issue or a single type of diversity. It's about promoting a fully diverse environment of many different backgrounds. So that's neurodiversity, educational, nationality, ethnicity, everything. And that's that. Too often we make it about, here's my diversity initiative, and it's really about looking for different viewpoints and different outlooks, different backgrounds. And when you're hiring, not trying to hire somebody that's just like you. So, and that's a problem that we all suffer from. And, the reason why we talk about men hiring men is because they've historically been in that position. We all need to be aware of that danger, and always, look at who they are, think about what your unconscious biases might be that make you sort of sync with somebody over another, and just try and be comfortable with being uncomfortable in an interview process with somebody who makes you think. Although I'm aware that's probably one of my unconscious biases, that I like people that make me think, so therefore am I in a way filling that up. On the other side of it then is being very inclusive and making people feel included. So it's not, what's the thing we say, that diversity is being is being invited, and inclusivity is when you feel welcome to stay. And that's the thing we need to remember, is not just building diversity, but making sure that when people are in, their opinion is valued, that you take what they do and they build on it. And mentorship really relates to that. And too often people use the term mentorship as a catch-all for everything. And we need to be clear, what's mentoring, what's coaching, what's sponsorship. And mentoring is really providing that sounding board to be a stronger person yourself, and it's a self-driven thing. Too often it can sound a little bit like a bad dating agency asking someone to be your boyfriend or something like that. Really, actually, you can have 10 mentors all looking at different factors of things you're trying to improve. I personally have never actually had anyone who knew they were my mentor, but I've had quite a few mentors. But I'm quite comfortable mentoring other people. But the whole point is that you have to drive that relationship to get value out of it. And that's the difference between being a mentor and when I step into being a sponsor for some people, where I can just really see that they need that push to get that next step in their career, and then I'll help them. And that's the thing we need to do, and that's part of diversity and inclusion. And the mentoring and supporting people helps them to feel included.
That's a really good perspective. So I heard a couple things. So the first thing I heard is you're encouraging individuals to embrace diversity by challenging yourself to think differently, because you make a really good point that, you know, you have certain requirements in a position that you're hiring for, but you see all too often hiring for a very similar train of thought as you have. So I think that's a very good point. And also the mentorship perspective, that you make a really good point with, you know, it isn't a dating relationship. It's not sending someone a note saying, will you be my mentor? Yes, no, or maybe, and waiting for that response. And it makes me think about, I had a conversation with someone and they asked, you know, who are your mentors? And, you know, I can definitely think of mentors that have had a greater impact on my life that they may not even know it. And I actually responded, my peers, not only my peers on my team, but my peers throughout the organization. Someone I meet every day can provide me guidance without even knowing it. It is your responsibility as someone seeking improvement and seeking mentorship to kind of be able to see that and to look for that and to have that open mind. That's an excellent perspective. Thank you. Does anybody else have anything that they would like to add to the mentorship topic?
I think I'll build on something that Sean said, but that notion of being uncomfortable and being brave, right? You know, often sometimes it's like, you know, when people think about going to get a mentor or a sponsor, you know, you sort of think, well, are they going to think that I'm weak if I ask for help or assistance? And, you know, you have to be, sometimes, yeah, you have to put yourself in an uncomfortable situation. And some of the best mentors that I've worked with, like you said, have either not known that they've been a mentor, or they've been from a completely different background and just give a completely different perspective that I know that I wouldn't have necessarily have come up with or have thought of. And so I think it's, you know, being a little bit uncomfortable, being a little bit vulnerable, and being a little bit brave to sort of say, hey, actually, you know what, I know that this is an area where maybe I'm not as strong, so I'm going to go and ask questions. There's nothing wrong with that. That was one of the best pieces of advice I ever got at the very start of my career, and I hold it to this day, right? There is no stupid question. You know, there's a time and a place for asking questions, and sometimes it's not always the most appropriate, but that, you know, always be inquisitive and always ask. And I think that comes with mentorship as well. So be a bit uncomfortable, be a little bit brave, and be a little bit vulnerable.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. To be vulnerable. And I think that vulnerability in the workplace is often seen as weakness. And that's where it comes back to Davisha's point of not being afraid to be authentic, right? I would rather have someone who asks a million questions after doing research because they're infinitely curious and what we call lifelong learner than someone who's afraid, because without challenges, you never improve and you know, you never expand your mode of thought and your way of thinking. So thank you. Does anybody else on the panel have anything they'd like to add?
Back to that saying, the secret to my career is never being afraid to read the manual or ask the question, and including what is the acronym. And more often than not, you find out that no one else in the room knew what that acronym stood for either. They were just pretending. And you all walk out a bit smarter. That is a top tip if you ever start on Microsoft, by the way, because we have so many acronyms. We have a glossary to allow you to look up the acronyms, of which there is one term acronym, three-letter acronym I looked up that has 39 different definitions. So it's like, but it is a key thing of don't be afraid to ask that question, because you probably find that other people were too afraid to ask the question.
Yeah, yep, definitely. And to that point, ladies, we have some questions from the audience that I feel like we should cover. So the first question, and I'll let you guys chime in as you see fit. The audience says, I was wondering, what suggestions do you have when working with executive management or a board that doesn't have the same viewpoints around women in the workplace and being in senior leadership positions? Does anybody want to comment on that? It's a tough one.
It's a tough one, right? Because I think, you know, I think part of sort of is being aware of those situations and being comfortable and being confident to respond to them. So an example I have, right, where not a board example, but I remember early on in my career, someone asked me to go out and go to New York, meet with a bunch of financial customers and sort of pitch our solution. And the person asked me, and I says, well, who are you having there? And they're like, oh, well, we're going to go for dinner at this private club, and we're going to, it's a bunch of sort of more traditional males, so to speak. And I'm stereotyping, right? But they sort of said, actually, you know what, it is a bit more of a traditional environment. And I said, well, you know what? Maybe I'm not the right person to actually come and do the pitch. I said, I'll come and do it. I can do it. I've got no problem with that. But for that particular context, just being aware yourself that something else will work. And that's where I think finding workplace allies is really important, because if senior leadership don't always understand, there will be people there who, you can use as allies to fight for your cause and sort of be on your side and help make that change, and maybe sort of present an idea in a different way. And I think sometimes people think that allies are a bad thing, a negative thing, or people have got sympathy for me, or they want to advocate for me because I can't do it for myself. No, think of people as coming from a good place. Often people aren't, but in a lot of cases people are. They're coming from a place of wanting to help and wanting to be a true positive ally.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely a good thing in getting and allowing people to work for you. But the other thing is go back to your core. I think people saying earlier on about certain expertise. If you are the real expert on that, don't be afraid to be that expert in the room, but go back to where that core of expertise is. But it's like any comms, and any comms to a board in particular, understand the best way to convey the message to get it across to them. So the sort of difference between a consultant and an engineer, isn't it? An engineer will tell you everything they know. A consultant will tell you what you need to know to make your decision. And that whole less is more and comms things, those apply. And it's just knowing that you've got a less receptive, maybe person on that other edge. I've never had it completely quite, it's very rarely very clearly set out like that as well. It's a suspicion. And I've heard a lot of suspicion or even accusations that somebody didn't like women in those positions or thought they weren't technical or sexist. When you actually got in the room, they were fine because it was an assumption of other people around them. Now, you can't guarantee that will be the case. But if you go back to your core expertise and demonstrate them to you have expertise, but where the allies come in is having somebody there in the room to have your back and protect you or actually support on that engagement and go in as a team, and not in as a team as in I'll brief you and you share, is as in a team. But sometimes that is the way it has to be. But I think hopefully it's getting less than it used to be. So, and we need to encourage it to become less so going forward.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that brings up the point, not only having advocates in the room, but not being afraid to not know something and admitting it, because you're not expected to know everything. You are not an encyclopedia, but to understand where to find the answer and to have the support system behind you, and not pretend. So again, that comes back to authenticity. So I'm going to switch gears. Go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. I don't know if you saw my raised hand. I will say one thing to round this out, though. In the extreme case, it's very rare, like Jennifer and Sean said, that the entire, there is a majority opinion and it is actually proven rather than assumption. A lot of time we are in our own head. But if you're in a situation like that, run. Value yourself enough to know when to call it a day and go somewhere else where you will be valued, where you will be cherished for who you are. Because yes, there are times when you rely on allies and you give it all you got, but then there are times when you just know you have to call it a day and go somewhere else.
Great. So piggybacks into another question that we had. How can you encourage with men so to challenge every day, right? To challenge them every day to continue the advancement of women. So it doesn't just stop at the diversity and inclusion initiative of 2020 and 2021, that, it continues beyond and we see the growth. We've seen growth since the 1900s, but, it's important to continue getting this in the forefront. Does anybody have any thoughts on the supporting of continued growth? with your peers?
I think collaboration. So we need to keep collaborating. We need to keep collaborating between us and between everybody. And we shouldn't assume that other people know our problems. And we should be observing the behaviors of people. And when we see something, instead of challenging them like in a big meeting, maybe we can have private conversations with them, like over coffee, make them turn them into an ally rather than provoke them in a, by the way, are challenging. So that's, I think, gonna get them to collaborate with us more.
That's a good point. And that actually segues into another question we received. So how do you transition from being a mentor to actually being an ambassador for your cause, no matter what it is? And I guess I'll kind of start that one off because I'm going through that transition right now, where, you know, we talk about a lot of people may see me as a mentor and I may not even know it. So it's in my area of professional responsibility to ensure that, you know, I put my best face forward, and we all have bad days, but we want to make sure that we make a difference, even very small, but impactful with everybody we come across, and make sure that we give everybody, you know, the respect to have a couple minutes to talk. I know we're all busy, but I also see that, you know, and I know we feel bad we can't give everybody time to discuss, but, you know, to allot time every week or every day to reach out to a peer or reach out to someone just to say hi. I mean, I think a lot of that gets lost with the virtual environment where we don't have that physical interaction anymore. So alternatively, to become an ambassador, I actually think the tech industry does it best. They've created what they call these evangelist positions. And essentially what it is someone who is, you know, lobbying is a poor choice of words, but they're lobbying for what they feel, you know, for a cause and for what they feel. It's the same thing as promoting awareness. So promoting awareness with breast cancer or autism or, you know, what we call neurodiversity, some other cause. I think it's important to be able to let those fears go, the fear of speaking up and the fear that someone may not accept your opinion. And, you know, if you want to go out and do things publicly, kind of like we're speaking now, I think that's great. But I also think that you need to be an ambassador behind the scenes more so, whether it be with someone that, you know, who is a 13-year-old who's interested in STEM and is afraid to ask questions because she's afraid of getting made fun of or bullied, to, you know, someone who's been in one industry for 20 years and is interested in making a transition to another and helping them redo their resume, helping them to get direction, you know, to promote their feeling of capability and to help them to connect the dots. So I think for me, ambassadorship starts behind the scenes. It is not about glamour. It is not about getting recognition. It's about our ability to help others, you know, get recognized and to, you know, promote their abilities and to help them get ahead. And I think that's the true definition of an ambassador. Would anybody else like to comment on that?
I just want to comment on a really good initiative we've got in the UK, Cyber First Girls, run by the NCSC. And that's originally when they first ran the competition, they ran it mixed. And they deliberately turned it into a girls' competition because they looked at the boys drowning out the girls. And the girl, and they watched one particular group where the girl obviously had got some really innovative ideas of how to fix it and was going to come up with some ideas. This is like 12, 13-year-olds. And the boys just all drowned her out and did it. And they actually have deliberately gone for a girls' competition because they want that thinking. They want to promote that into. So it's diversity because they knew that they were losing something because they were using an innovative way of fixing it. And I've been lucky enough to go to their finals twice. And the best thing about that is watching a room full of girls who were all a little, some of them are not geeky, some are very shy, very quiet. The last one, in fact, a year ago, just before lockdown hit, I was able to do the interviews at the finals and they all have to present their results back. And one of the girls was so overcome and stressed and worried about it. She ended up breaking down in tears in the fake interview. And it was that everyone just sort of saying, you know, it's okay and supporting her and the shyness But then a group of girls being able to be in the room and go, it's okay to be techie. It's okay to be geeky. It's okay to not care about, some of them like dressing up and most of them don't, because this whole thing about girls are interested in technology because they're only interested in fashion and dress. I wasn't one of those teenagers. And there's plenty of teenage girls that are not interested in fashion and dress and are made to feel a little bit wrong as a teenager, your whole life. And it's good to support the girls that are like into fashion and dress, into cyber as well. But the other ambassadorship is to say, you know what, it's okay not to hit the stereotype. It's just as it's like stereotypically that technology is male and men do this, there's a stereotypical view of what it is to be a girl. And it's actually, you know what, if you like watching sci-fi and playing with technology and you'd rather wear jeans and a t-shirt than a dress, that's perfectly fine. And if you want to wear a dress and go hacking and do things, that's perfectly fine. And that to me is ambassadorship, giving support. And if you're terribly shy, that's fine as well. It's all, we're here to support you. And that to me that's why I'm a real passionate supporter of Cyber First Girls, because I watch them not only help those girls technically improve the industry, but also help them to find some confidence and some centering in themselves. It's just great to watch them blossom. So I'm just quiet because I can go on about how great they are for ages.
Yeah, that's a really good point, right? Breaking down stereotypical walls. And you know, I'll say personally, I've always been into cars and drag racing and everything. And I my t-shirt collection, my racing t-shirt collection is much larger than my office clothing collection. And, you know, outside of the office, you wouldn't even think that, you know, I was into clothes and shoes and things like that. So it is important because we put so much emphasis and energy towards, you know, learning the tech or learning the trade or, you know, learning the business that we don't have time for that. And that's not important to us. And I think that is a really excellent point to make. Thank you. So I have one more question. I think we're wrapping up shortly here. To those women starting off in their careers, how can we change the perception of a strong female leader being seen as intimidating to one who is instead seen as empowering? Would anybody like to comment on that?
I think I can go. So it's about the way we use our words, I think, even when we have our opinions, because when we think about women leaders, we think ourselves as the disadvantaged group. And sometimes we try to make up for it by being like too assertive. But assertiveness does not mean aggressiveness. So we need to be very empathetic. We need to be calm, collected, and confident, and just being ourselves without trying to prove anything. I think somebody else also already mentioned, we don't have to prove anything. We just accept that we are equals for ourselves first and act accordingly. And then this will get, we will get the message across, I think.
It's a great point. Authenticity, I think, is reigning true throughout this entire conversation, and also confidence. Not being afraid that if you're confident that, you know, you're going to be reprimanded for expressing your opinion if it's not positive, right? Because that's a huge thing. It's okay to say it's not a good idea or, you know, no, but to use the opportunity to educate as to why and to encourage the thoughts from others to come to a consensus, I think is important. Would anybody else like to comment on that one?
I think just to build on what Dieter said, it is exactly that, right? Present, don't prove. Have the confidence in your skill and your leadership to just stand back and sort of take the over-indexing when you're trying to present or prove you deserve to be there. And as well, I think there is this point around I've lost my thought. I do apologize. There is this point about there is a perception, right? If you are aggressive, if you're confident, there is that perception that confident women come across as aggressive. Own it. It's fine. Like, they think that. that's, sorry to say, their problem. As long as you can sleep soundly at night, knowing you've done in the best interest of your team and the business and done it in the right way, it's absolutely fine. It is, you're taking everyone on the journey. In this case, you're a change maker, and change requires you to be the person that gets hammered over and over and over again, and that's fine. They will come on the journey with you. It's just the roles we play and the shoes that we fill currently, so that the ones coming after us don't have to have the journey that we've gone on and have a better experience.
I would say, sorry, we need to listen as well. If you're being aggressive or seen as aggressive, it's okay. I think it's okay as long as we're not seen as, oh, she is not listening to me. We need to keep listening, otherwise we're not going to get further. Okay, Sarah.
Yeah, I think showing your vulnerability as well is key, and I'm a big fan of humility, that you don't know you don't always know the answers. None of us has managed a team through a global pandemic before, right? And so you're not always going to know the right thing to do or the best way to react. And I think exposing yourself as vulnerable and, getting your team's thoughts, okay, well, what do you think we should do here? Makes you, I think it empowers people because they can see, they are human, So I think that's important, is to show your vulnerability and show your human side, which is something that I think women do that better than men. I'll be honest.
Yeah, that's a good point. So you talk about the virtual workspace. Would anybody like to comment in the last few minutes we have on how to continue promoting not only a diverse workspace, but to help foster that culture when you're virtual and you don't have that human interaction? Does anybody have a best practice they'd like to share, or something that you've experienced?
It's just communication, isn't it? It's just all about communication and, tailoring it to the right people, because everyone's struggled through this. Every single person has struggled for different reasons, whether it's financially, whether it's just mentally because of the enormity of the situation. And I think it's just making sure that people keep talking. And, you can have death by Teams meeting, death by Zoom. So there's a balance, sometimes just picking up the phone is a nice, refreshing change. And, I'm looking forward to being able to see people again. But, I just think tailoring your communication, using that kind of emotional intelligence to pick up. If you say to someone, you okay? And they say, yeah, are they really? And again, as a female leader, I think our intuitions are quite good at, actually, I don't know if they are okay. So I just think talking to people, keeping everyone informed and involved. I was looking back today, we're nearly a year next week before we went remote, and I was looking back at the communications I put out, and, I showed the vulnerability. I don't know the answers here. I said maybe lockdown will last a couple of weeks. What little did we know? And, here we are 52 weeks down the line, and, we're all learning. We're all still learning. So, yeah, all about communication for me.
I've always managed international teams. So even when we go back in the office, this has been my way of managing teams. So it's actually got worse because people have got Teams fatigue. But usually it's got to be video on, make sure you pick up the cues, and you have to over communicate more than you would than when you're in the same office. And that applies going remote. So in a way, we go back in the office, my team are all in the US, I live in the UK. I'm still going to have to, I won't be on a plane every week anyway. So it's literally got to be, where you might do a fortnightly formal call when you'd see them in the office every day. When it's remote, it's got to be weekly. Even if that weekly is talking about their cat. It's like, because you don't get the general around the office chat. And I'm not particularly, I haven't got kids or white, so it doesn't occur to me to ask. So it's only by having a regular chat do these things sort of come up. So that's, over communicate.
Thank you.
Yeah, such a great point, isn't it, to create those water cooler moments intentionally, virtually, like 5-minute coffees with team members, just so that also I'm sure a lot of us have had through this year, new people join and they're entirely remote. They've never seen us, never seen the office, and just being conscious of the fact that they need a little bit more. We need to over-index with them and just create space for them to sort of feel comfortable, because imagine starting a new job and everything that that brings, and then doing it alone in your living room, not knowing what is going on outside of your four walls. So I think that is so important, communicating, but conversely as well, knowing when to give them space to actually get stuff done, because otherwise you find 8 hours, everyone's on Zoom, and then the work begins at the end of the workday. So they're doing a second shift. So balancing that is key as well.
That's a good point. Do you guys ever find that there is more of an occurrence of individuals who, feel that they're not heard because they don't have that in-person presence right now, who may respond just to be heard versus where they used to just respond to add a critical thought or an important perspective on a topic or a problem?
Yeah, I think there is, and it's like with the camera on, right? I mean, I must admit, I never used to put my camera on just because I don't know. I just never used to think about it. Now I have it on all the time, and I think giving people that space to sort of feel, hey, listen, just because you got your camera on, you don't have to be necessarily camera ready, right? You're not always maybe going to have time to have gotten yourself properly ready when you get on your first call in the morning at 6 a.m, right? Or hey, just now my husband popped in and asked me where was my son's mask for school. And you have to deal with those things, and I think there are those situations where people who previously just communicated in a different way maybe feel that extra pressure that, I have to be on camera and I have to respond and I have to chime in, and making those people feel comfortable to say, hey, listen, it's okay, right? You can be on camera, but you can't, if you are doing some multitasking, or you can't be 100% in a great place with a great background location, it's okay. Right. So I think those people who sometimes don't always, I think people are trying to speak up more because they feel it's a necessity. So making people realize that it's okay. It's okay to chime in when you've got something to add, and it's okay to not chime in when you don't.
Yeah, the topic of kind of justification, I think, is a huge one, because I personally find myself doing that sometimes, apologizing for looking like I haven't slept in 3 weeks, or for my dog jumping in, which I'm surprised she hasn't during this conversation, and barking and wanting to be, petted or fed or taken out. So yeah, I think that's a really important point to, again, let's come back to authenticity, not apologize for being you. And I find that it helps us to understand ourselves or our peers better too, seeing some of what the personal life, for example, that they don't really talk about at work, and now you're getting to know them actually better virtually than you would have if you're in the office. Does anybody else find that may be the case?
I completely agree. It's that vulnerability and that exposing yourself a little bit, that you are human and you've not always got your face on in the morning. And you think back 2 years ago to that BBC clip where the correspondent with the kids come in and everyone thought it was hilarious. That's good, that happens every day. Every day. And it's no biggie. People are expecting your kids to be around, and you are mothers, you are fathers, you are pet owners, and that's just I think it's a nice thing. It's a really nice thing to just get that glimpse into the person rather than the position. That's one thing I like.
I love vicariously living through other people's dogs and kids.
Yeah.
it's like I love a dog, and I've moved jobs, so I can probably get a dog, but I haven't got a dog, so I love seeing other people's dogs and cats and kids, and they all apologise, and I'm sitting in a house on my own. Don't apologise, bring them out, put them on your knee, chat. It's great. Even I've got one colleague, I know her 2 kids, they know all of her work colleagues, they know all her customers. Everyone walks in, they walk in the room, the kids go, hi Hector. It's like that. I'm pretty sure that one of them could actually probably design the best security system for a couple of financial services companies at the age of 5, but that's great.
So I have another question that came in from our audience. This is a great one. What specific sites or information resources can you recommend to learn more about this topic, and how can we increase awareness? So this is in reference to neurodiversity and the conversation that we had around neurodiversity inclusion in the workplace.
I just recently shared a post, and in that post there is a YouTube channel, which I have on my list to go through the videos. Apparently, it's like a young lady who owns this channel, and she has ADHD, and she shares her experiences. And I'm really looking forward to understanding more about that.
The other one that I would suggest on neurodiversity is there's a program by DXC. It's called the Dandelion Project. It was started a few years ago out of the Australian DXC team, and it's all about essentially how to help integrate individuals with autism into the workplace. And I think to your point, actually, Krista, they found that individuals with autism are very well suited to areas like cybersecurity and analysis because of how they actually work. So Michael Fieldhouse, who initially started that project, there's a lot of good resources there. So if you just search DXC Dandelion Project, you'll find a whole bunch of resources, including some, just really great stories and success stories of where that's worked.
Yeah, I had a brief introduction in sound, so apologies if someone already said this, but as far as that cyber is particular, there's an organisation called NeuroCyber, does a lot of stuff. So apologies if they've already mentioned, I had a brief interruption in the sound, but they're literally an organisation looking at promoting neurodiverse people into cyber. There's the specific jobs where it absolutely is an advantage, and some of the analyst SOC jobs and things like that. There's quite a few roles where it's really useful, so and you can excel, so I definitely look at those.
Yeah, that's actually a good one. So I believe that's one that I follow on LinkedIn. Personally, I use my hobby. I know that neurodiversity is big in cyber and tech careers right now, so we talk about it a lot. And as a hiring manager, having that position where you can make a difference in someone's life, I definitely look for the uniqueness in every candidate that could add a potentially different and critical facet to your team that you didn't realize you were missing because of the perspective. But I also actually use my hobby, drag racing, as a forum to kind of promote awareness among my peers who may not, maybe concerned about trying to steer their neurodiverse family member into a tech career because they feel it's demanding or they wouldn't ever be able to do it. And I like to kind of relate from my experiences in both cyber, having someone immediately in my family who is neurodiverse, and again, that's that getting people to understand your perspective and bringing them to consensus and getting them to open up and feel comfortable. So I think that I always come back to the granular level when it comes to being, an advocate for something or, trying to help someone. You can lobby and do programs at a higher level, at a national level, but I find that I've been able to make the most difference from my daily interactions and people, just spending the time to say hi and talk about a subject that they would otherwise be, either embarrassed or, scared to talk about with someone openly.
For me, I find listening to the stories of neurodiverse people is really educating for me to understand as well, because it's being aware that I need to expand my education. I think it's something we all need to do every day, just to treat everybody as an individual. Yeah,
absolutely. Yep. So here's another question. So let's shift a little bit back. What do you think are some unique strengths that women tend to bring to the table that are often lacking in an all-male environment?
might be stereotyping. I think women can be quite good multitaskers. I think, Krista, you mentioned it before, right? I think especially not only, but when you're a mother as well. I will say that when I became a mother, it took my multitasking to a whole new level. And I look at it and I go, well, if I can broker an argument between a 6-year-old and a 4-year-old, I can probably broker, most arguments that happen in business. Because there is no one as stubborn as 2 small toddlers. So I'm not saying that jokingly, I genuinely mean it, right? Every single day, I have to negotiate with my kids, right? Negotiate to get them to bed, negotiate to get them to brush their teeth, to eat their vegetables, right? One needs to go this way, the other one wants to go that way. So I think that goes into the multitasking and context switching. I often find that females in my teams are very good at context switching. So being able to deal with different situations and adapt themselves, whether that's the topic or the response that they have to give.
Yeah, the bartering is an interesting point. My daughter is very young. She's almost 15 months now. And I was just bartering with her last night that if she, went to her room to get ready for bed with me and let me put her jams on, I would give her my Apple Watch, which she is obsessed with. So there's that tack at a very young age.
There you go.
And I would read her the M is for malware book that I got her as a joke. And apparently she loves it. So. What else? Here's one. Here's a great one. One piece of advice for women looking to start their career in tech. This is a huge one right now. A lot of people looking to break into security because they're passionate about it, but they don't maybe have a degree in security, no experience. So because security or tech is so specific and the minutiae of details so critical that it's difficult to get a start. So how would you recommend that a woman looking to start their career in tech or cyber or some industry that they were never in before do that? Or maybe in general.
Yeah, I'm going to repeat what I said before. It's communities. So the way to get into those communities, if you don't know them, go to meetup.com or Eventbrite, just search for your interest, find some groups that you're really interested in, and attend multiple of the groups events, not just one group, different ones, so that you see which one fits culturally with you better. And then they will invite you to their Slack or Discord server, their community space, wherever that is. And then you become the part of community. You start asking questions. You start getting mentorship, or even from your peers or people who have gone through a similar journey or are going through a similar journey with you. There's just so many resources, and it's always free. It's just your time that you're investing in. And you can also ask for them for free resources, because there's just a huge amount of free resource over internet. It can be daunting to find the right ones. So you can ask in those communities about which ones did you find best. And it's community love. That's my thing.
Okay. Who else would like to comment on that one?
I think it's also trying to get any sort of experience you can. So if you're first starting off, that can be volunteering. It doesn't have to be in church. It's like helping in a charity or something like that. And then don't put that down under volunteering activities, put that down under work experience, because if you're helping out to do it, I've seen a lot of people saying I've got no experience, and then you go through their volunteering and literally I've changed their CV, took it out, put it as a work experience, because they actually have been doing that while they were looking for a job. If you're already at work, then looking at ways, quite often, particularly in cyber, people are looking for people to be champions, become one of those champions, and then again, use that as experience, build connections to, this is probably one for you, Krista, to answer from an internal perspective, build connections to your cyber team and try and see if you can make an internal transition.
Yeah, I know personally, I started in biology. I wanted to be a nurse, and I went through many years of going from audit and risk to, taking over a role as a program manager because they needed it filled. And, I stepped up even though I didn't really know the full gamut of what I was doing. So, putting yourself out there, not being afraid to take chances, I think is a big one. The important thing about that is relating your experiences, whether they be volunteer oriented or in your just daily life, just like I like to relate my racing to my risk management career. There are a lot of correlations and a lot of similarities between things that you do in your everyday life that would show a potential employer that you understand the critical correlations that will make you a successful person, regardless of what you chase, and always being a lifelong learner and not being afraid to say you don't know, and to say, I'm chasing a new topic, or I'm not strong in this topic and I want to learn. Helps a potential employer see that you're teachable, and you have attention to detail as well, even in your personal life. It's easy to show how that shines through to a potential career opportunity. So yeah, don't be afraid to chase opportunities and to chase things that are outside of your comfort zone. And I think that the struggles, I tell the story a lot, how I want to say like 5 or 6 years ago now, I had a really bad accident, and I almost could have died. It was a cage that actually saved me that shouldn't have even been there. We kind of overbuilt the car for what it was running. And that failure opened up a lot for me when it came to how I viewed my career, my personal life, the chances that I was willing to take, and risk management in my life as a whole, even though that's a really important kind of career related perspective. And I think that we can take stuff that happens in our personal life and absolutely help, ourselves relate to employers.
It's actually very inspiring.
Yeah, and just to close that off, if I may, I think an important piece is as well not to think linear in terms of when you're looking to make a switch, when you're looking to take a step. Don't think linear, because what seems like a side step will eventually build up and will catch up. So don't think I've been doing this, I need to continue this step. Like, it's fine. If you have to start over, it's fine. Just don't think linear. Sometimes sideways is good. Sometimes what is seemingly taking a step down ends up sort of giving you back twofold later on. We're in a marathon, it's a long-term game. So think about it that way, and not in terms of, is this next move one up, sideways up.
Wonderful.
Excellent.
Thank you so much for that, Devisha. I just wanted to jump back on here just before we close up this discussion. I wanted to take the time to thank again the audiences and viewers tuning in today. Thank you so much for taking this time to join us. Thank you so much for our guests here to share your amazing experiences, your insights, your very helpful thoughts. Thank you so much. Thank you, Krista, so much for helping us moderate this discussion once again. Viewers tuning in, I hope you took away some unique insights there. Make sure to keep in touch with us. Join us on the Technology Leaders Club on LinkedIn, or you can join us and download our Technology Leaders Club app for more discussions like these, for other features that we have, for example, roundtable discussions or white papers. Thank you once again. Happy International Women's Day, and we hope to see you very soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.